Hello friends, Tao here and welcome to my Legion pre-patch survival guide Blood DK edition. And here we're going to be talking about what you need to know as a Blood Death Knight to survive through the pre-patch and that period of time between Warlords of Draenor and Legion proper that launches on August 30th. Now, I'm not sure if the pre-patch is going to be on the 19th or the 26th of July, but Legion launches on August 30th, and this is everything I feel that you're going to need to know to go ahead and make it through this transitional period and be fucking A-okay. So, first, most important thing, what has changed for the Blood DK? Essentially, your rotation or the things that you have to worry come down to a much smaller but much more focused set of things. First of all, you have Heart Strike. Heart Strike is going to be generating you bonus ruining power, and it's going to be cleaving. Death Strike is going to be healing you, giving you an absorb shield. Marrow Rend is actually going to put Bone Shield up on you, and it's going to be very important to keep that up because it's going to be reducing the damage taken and increasing your rune regeneration. Death and Decay is going to be down almost all the time, and when it is, you're going to be using Heart Strike to hit everything inside of your Death and Decay. Blood Boil is a filler, but also an AoE attack damage that spreads your disease, and Death Grip is still here so you can pull enemies to you. That's the bare bones things that you need to know, the basics of Blood DK. But what's this? What is this crazy magical thing you see down here? What are these runes? Yes, no more blood runes, no more frost runes, no more unholy, and no more death. Everything is a rune. You no longer have different types of runes, and your abilities cost 1 rune, 2 runes, nothing runes, things like that. And they generate runic power when you use up the rune. So that's the biggest thing to keep in mind. Your runes have changed, and your basic abilities have also changed. Essentially, the mechanic of the class comes down to a very simple thing. You run over to a target, and you want to make sure that it has your disease, which you can apply with Blood Boil, which is free and is on a recharging cooldown. You have 2 charges of it, baseline, does a little bit of damage. It applies Blood Plague, which is going to drain health from the target and put it on you. You have 1 disease as blood, but you're going to use Blood Boil to spread it and apply it. So you see right there, okay, you got your disease up. You're going to make sure that you have Death and Decay down as often as humanly possible because it's going to be giving you rune regen if you take a talent for it. But it's also going to let your Heart Strike hit more targets inside of your Death and Decay. You're also going to have the ability to get a Crimson Scourge proc, which puts down another Death and Decay. And then you want Marrow Rend up, because Marrow Rend is keeping Bone Shield on you. And what does Bone Shield do? It's going to reduce the damage you take and also increase your haste. And Death Strike is going to cost runic power. It's going to cost 45 runic power. It's still going to heal you for the amount of damage that you've taken in the last couple of seconds. Baseline maximum 10% of your health. Minimum, I should say, is 10% of your maximum health, and it can increase depending on how much damage you've taken in the last couple of seconds. Essentially, that is what you have to worry about as a Blood DK. That is how your mechanics of your class have changed. You keep up Bone Shield with Marrow Rend. You use Heart Strike to generate runic power that you use on Death Strike, and you want to make sure that you're always putting your Blood Boil on target so that it can apply Blood Plague, and then you have Death and Decay down as often as humanly possible. That's what you got to worry about. That's the mechanics of your class. That's how it's changed. You no longer have a big cooldown called Icebound Fortitude. Now you're relying on Vampiric Blood. It's going to have that short cooldown everyone knows and loves, the 1.5 minute cooldown, but it's also going to increase the healing you receive and increase your max health. It's going to be your big fucking thing. You still have access to Death Grip. You still have access to Gorfine's Grasp. Essentially, other things about the class have been more narrowed and focused down. Nothing too crazy beyond what I've just described there. A couple of these abilities that you're going to see here are talent choices that I've made. But that's the bare bones basic thing that you need to know. That's how your class has changed. You use those things, you keep them up. That's what you got to worry about. Keeping all of that in mind, your talents have changed drastically. Basically everything has changed and gone through different iterations. You're going to want to keep track of the fact that all of these things are different. The only rune regeneration tier, you might say, is the 57 tier. You take Rapid Decomposition, or you take Soul Gorge if you hate your life. or you take Spectral Deflection if for whatever reason you're tanking something that's doing a shit ton of damage to you. You want to go ahead and use Spectral Deflection so that more Bone Shield charges get used to keep you alive. But then that sacrifices that rune regeneration. While Unholy and Frost have, I think it's Runic Corruption baseline, you do not. If you don't have Bone Shield up, you have 10% less haste, which means you're getting 10% less rune regeneration. And if you don't take Rapid Decomposition or Soul Gorge, you're not going to have any other rune regen from there. Your spec has been slowed down. It's more narrow focused. It's arguably going to be fine because most people are going to be overgeared as fuck and have wildly huge stats at level 100. But as you level up, which you're not going to be doing in the pre-patch, but as you level up, your stats will be reduced, you'll have less runes, less stuff like that. Just keep that in mind. But it's important to know that your talents have changed drastically. Go ahead and read them. The biggest thing people are going to come into contact with is the fact that Death Strike is 45 runic power, and nothing else costs you runic power unless you talent into it for things such as Mark of Blood or Bone Storm. Go ahead and play with the different things, see what's changed, see how things differ, and keep that in mind that also there are no more glyphs. Okay, look at this. There's no more glyphs. Glyphs work in a different way now. Glyphs are basically going to all be minor glyphs that you put in your bags and you can apply to specific spells in your spellbook. No more than one glyph can be applied to a specific spell. But you can apply a bunch of minor glyphs to all the different spells you want. They're mostly cosmetic. They're not going to be changing your gameplay as much. You're going to lose all the other glyphs that you had. Just keep that in mind. Look through things. Make sure that you don't remember certain things that your glyphs provided to you. Okay, so keep that in mind. It's not going to be like you don't have the reset on your death grip when you kill something that gives you experience or honor. Keep that in mind. It's not going to reset immediately. It's only 15-second cooldown now. So you want to make sure that you remember how your class actually plays without the access to the glyphs, and then that you've lost all that functionality. You want to go ahead and maybe get it from a scribe, but just keep in mind the whole glyph thing has changed, and I specifically saved it for my tank videos because I want to make sure I say in every single tank video, your class, you have to remember, for example, as a Brewmaster main, I cannot move with Zen Meditation, and I'm going to have to remember that because I don't have that minor glyph anymore. So just keep that in mind. The other thing to know is that your gear probably has changed. If you have gear from Hellfire Citadel, things are working a little bit differently. As you can see in about 2 seconds. Okay, so there you go. You have your tier. Your new sets is Heartstrike has a 25% chance to generate an extra 10 runic power, and your Force set is reduces the cost of Death Strike by 5 runic power. Basically just giving you more resources. And the other things to keep in mind is that bonus armor does not exist anymore. It is not apparent on any of these necks. It is not going to show up on any of your cloaks. It's not going to show up on your, for example, your necks or your rings or your trinkets. None of that. Bonus armor doesn't exist anymore as a stat that's showing up on this gear. This gear, it may show up later on in Legion, but HFC gear, it's not on there. And it's important to keep in mind that the trinkets have also changed, obviously. So, Anzu's Cursed Plume is going to be providing you versatility, not bonus armor. It's still going to be a mastery proc. The Imbued Stone Sigil is just going to be versatility mastery. Your class trinket as a Blood DK is going to be Merylrend deals 24% increased damage and heals you for 24% of the damage dealt. To me that sounds strong, but it depends on how hard Merylrend's going to be hitting with level 100 stats. Tyrant's Degree has also changed to be a mastery trinket with still the stacking stamina buff. And Warlords is still going to be haste with a damage taken reduction effect applied to it. So just keep that in mind. So beyond that, the only other thing I really have to say is that there's an ongoing argument right now in the Blood DK community as to the best stats for Blood DK. Keep in mind, please, this can change. This is not set in stone. This is the only part of my video that's not super crazy solid because the truth of the matter is that they aren't even sure themselves, the theory crafters, the people on MMO Champion. They're arguing about this still right now. And these values that they're talking about they're talking about 110. They're talking about artifact traits maxed out. They're talking about having all this stuff here, which again you don't have access to artifacts in the pre-patch. They're talking about having all this stuff maxed out, which is going to change the priority. But essentially, what it comes down to is you want to get haste to a certain point that makes you comfortable when you have enough runes regenning to get your runic power. Remember, Death Knights have always had runes to runic power to runes, a sort of resource loop that doesn't exist anymore. Runic power spending will not give you more runes. But haste to a certain point, And then it's basically a fight between crit or mastery, with versatility possibly being the shadowy, OP, in the background, amazing stat. Versatility, from what I've heard, the murmurs over in the simulation craft community, versatility is looking like it might be the best tank stat for all the tanks. But it's not been widely accepted or approved yet, so it still kind of murmurs. But essentially, haste to a point, and then it's a fight between crit mastery, and versatility is always good for you. It's important to note, Death Strike does not heal the way it used to. Consumption, your artifact ability, which is your big oh shit heal, doesn't exist in the pre-patch because you don't have your artifact. You will be working with a smaller toolbox, and it's important to keep that in mind because that toolbox is still powerful. You are the only class that has access to Gorfien's Grasp besides Vengeance Demon Hunters. Your toolbox is smaller, but it's still strong, and now you have a new movement speed ability called Wraithwalk, which is going to be replacing Death's Advance because everyone took that talent in Warlords. You have Wraithwalk baseline. You do have a talent that can affect it, but of course you're going to want to take a look at all your talents, see what's changed, play with the different abilities, play with the different ways that it works. You're going to want to test things out so you can figure out what's the most comfortable way to level up once the expansion actually launches on August 30th. But basically that's pretty much it. I've talked about what's changed, the actual mechanics of the Blood DK in the Legion ideology, the gear that might be changing from HFC, glyphs, talents, your rotation, and finally the stats that we talked about. So anyways, guys, this has basically been my Legion pre-patch survival guide Blood DK edition. I hope you guys liked the video. If you did, go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you want to see more of this type of content, I'm trying to churn these out as fast as humanly possible because the pre-patch might be launching on the 19th or the 26th, and I want to make sure I'm ready and prepared for either scenario. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate all the support you guys have given me. I've been so happy with how the channel has been growing, and I hope you all have a wonderful and fantastic fucking day.